Everyone in the village called Ryan lazy. While others swung heavy axes 10 times to fell a single tree, Ryan would stand back and study the grain of the wood, asking if the entire job could be done with one precise strike. That pattern applied to everything. While his peers accepted the grueling reality of manually hauling heavy water buckets back and forth from the river, Ryan spent his time building a network of wooden channels to let gravity handle the transport. The village admired hard, visible struggle. Because Ryan spent his hours sitting under a tree instead of sweating in the dirt, the collective assumption was that his refusal to exert effort would eventually lead to his downfall. We instinctively measure value by mapping physical effort directly to results. When the search for systemic efficiency requires a period of thinking rather than moving, the immediate output looks like inaction, even if that period of thought creates a system that will eventually bypass the output of 100 laborers. Ryan's father owned a small rice farm, where Ryan's only daily responsibility was to manually chase away the flocks of birds trying to eat their harvest. Ryan planted a series of wooden poles across the field, connected them with tension ropes, and attached shiny pieces of scrap metal. Whenever the wind blew, the entire field rattled and flashed. The birds fled, and Ryan went back to sleep. The local farmers mocked his lack of character, even as they looked over the fence. Under the cover of night, many of those same farmers began installing their own versions of his pulley system across their farms. At this stage, Ryan's intelligence was purely defensive. He was using his efficiency instinct to maintain his own comfort, solving small problems so he could return to his preferred state of doing nothing. That balance broke when a severe drought hit the region. Shortly after the heat peaked, Ryan's father became seriously ill, leaving Ryan alone to manage the survival of the farm. There were no quick hacks for the reality of a dying farm. Ryan had to manage watering, soil repair, and the physical harvest simultaneously. Confronted with a complex, multivariable crisis that required consistent manual labor, he fell back on his old habits. He slept late and told himself he would find a clever way to handle it tomorrow. But tomorrow arrived too late. Without the daily, grinding effort required, the crop stalks began wilting, rapidly turning brown and crumbling into dry dust. Months of his father's work vanished in days. A mind structured entirely around avoiding exertion often collapses into apathy when it meets a problem that cannot be solved with a single clever trick. Looking at the dust of his father's farm, Ryan realized that his desire for ease was becoming a path toward losing everything. The next morning, a royal decree reached the village. The king was hosting a competition, and the prize was a chest of gold, the exact amount Ryan calculated would be necessary to pay for his father's medicine and save the farm. Ryan volunteered immediately. While the villagers laughed, reminding him that he lacked the stamina to walk to the palace, let alone compete, Ryan felt a physical terror.
He knew they were right about his physical condition. The first challenge was a grueling lake crossing. Hundreds of physically superior, highly trained opponents lined up at the shore, ready to dive into the deep water. The competitors threw themselves into the water, fighting the current and exhausting their muscles within the first few 100 meters. Ryan stayed on the shore. He gathered fallen branches, thick vines, and discarded wood from the forest edge, lashing them together into a stable, floating raft. While the swimmers began to cramp and slow down in the cold water, Ryan used a long pole to push his raft forward. He glided past the leaders and crossed the finish line without the need for a single swim stroke. When intelligence meets low urgency, the result is apathy. But when forced to solve a problem under absolute need, the mind stops looking for a way out and starts looking to win. The final challenge was a daunting test of endurance, moving a massive, solid wooden block over a distance of 1 kilometer. The other contestants immediately chose tools to multiply their strength. One grabbed a heavy rope for pulling. Another used a thick iron lever to move the block inches at a time. Ryan selected a small carving knife. He sat down next to his block and spent the first hour peeling away thin layers of wood, while the crowd mocked his apparent return to laziness. He was actually changing the physics of the challenge. After an hour of work, The immovable block had been transformed into a massive carved sphere. Ryan placed his hands on the sphere and pushed. It rolled forward with minimal resistance. He accelerated past the exhausted competitors, who were still struggling to move their square blocks against the friction of the dirt, and crossed the finish line first. The breakthrough wasn't about finding the strength to move the weight. It was about using that time to alter the nature of the obstacle itself. In the aftermath, the villagers claimed Ryan won because he was smarter than everyone else. But Ryan had always been smart, and until the drought, that intelligence had produced nothing but a quiet life in the shade. Most people who struggle with chronic laziness aren't lacking in capability. They are experiencing a gap between their talent and a reason to use it. Without a purpose that carries more weight than the desire for comfort, a capable mind will always choose energy conservation over action. When that meaningful purpose is missing, even the most brilliant individuals will default to the easiest path available, avoiding any effort that doesn't provide an immediate reward. Ryan's victory came from a change in his environment, not a change in his personality. He remained the same boy who hated unnecessary work, but he finally learned to chain his mind to a sense of discipline that was fueled by his father's survival. If you find yourself stuck in a cycle of excuses, look past your habits and examine your goals. Find the objective that is important enough to make your comfort feel secondary. That is where the transformation begins.